What if the only thing left of your mother was about to be sold to a stranger? Two boys sat on a frayed mat beside a silver trash can, their knees drawn close to their chests. A battered shoebox rested between them. Inside it, 6 tiny toy cars, chipped and crooked, painted with what looked like nail polish and broken crayons. Each car was different. Each car was loved. A sign leaned against the box. It was cardboard, slightly soggy from the snow. Written in blocky red letters. $1 for Mama's dream. That morning, the city didn't care. It never did. Snowflakes fell like ashes, light at first, then heavier. People rushed past, clutching coffee cups and glancing at watches. Leather shoes clicked, heels splashed, phones buzzed. But nobody stopped. Nobody looked. From the 19th floor across the street, Robert Mathers noticed them. He hadn't meant to. He was stirring his espresso with a silver spoon, staring at the frost creeping across the corner of his office window. But then, there they were. 2 small boys. Identical coats, several sizes too big. Mismatched gloves. Ears red from cold. Eyes focused on the shoebox like it was something sacred. Robert blinked. The image stirred something. He looked again. One boy pulled out the smallest carved blue, with a single gold stripe. He wiped it gently with the sleeve of his coat. Then he whispered, "Don't sell this one unless we have to." His brother nodded. "It still smells like her." That was the first time Robert didn't look away. The wind howled between the buildings like it had a voice. Robert stood still, coffee in hand, watching the scene unfold. His office was silent. Too silent. Glass walls. Steel furniture. One abstract painting he never liked. It looked like someone had thrown paint at it and called it expensive. And yet, here he stood, transfixed by 2 boys and a box of broken toys. "Sir," his assistant called from the door. "Your 10 a.m. meeting?" He nodded. "Give me 5. He didn't move. By noon, the snow thickened. The younger boy started coughing, the kind that curls the spine and steals your breath. Still, he sat up straight. Still, he smiled when someone walked by. Still, no one stopped. Robert finally turned away, but only for a moment. When he looked back, something had changed. One of the cars was now wrapped in cloth. Not just any cloth, a faded piece of fabric printed with tiny daisies. It wasn't for sale. It was protection. Memory wrapped in cotton. His breath caught. By mid-afternoon, he was outside. No plan. Just his coat, his scarf, and a silent question pounding in his chest: why can't I stop thinking about them? He crossed the street. The closer he got, the smaller they seemed. And quieter. The older boy looked up. For a moment, their eyes met, blue meeting brown, silence meeting silence. Then the boy looked down again. Robert stood nearby, pretending to scroll through his phone. He heard them whisper, "We still need $8. If we don't get it by tomorrow." The younger one finished the sentence, "They'll sell it." Mama's car. Robert turned away, something cold and aching clawing at his ribs. That night, in his apartment, Robert stared at his old sketchbook. He hadn't opened it in years. He flipped a few pages, hands trembling. There it was, a drawing he did as a child. A toy car. Blue with a gold stripe. just like the one in the box. He sat down, hard. He didn't know what those boys were trying to save exactly. But he knew what it felt like to lose something that held your whole past. Before he built towers, Robert built toy cars out of scrap and dreams. He used to call them speed machines. When Robert was 9, he'd gather soda caps, broken rulers, and rubber bands from the junk drawer. Then he'd sit by the window, sketch blueprints like they were plans for spaceships. His little brother, Daniel, would watch in awe. "Make one for me?" "Yours'll be the fastest," Robert always said. They painted them together. Added wings made from paper clips. Colored windows with markers. Laughed until the living room floor turned into a racetrack. That was before everything changed. Before the fights. Before the silence. Before Robert stopped making anything that didn't come with profit margins. Back in the present, Robert stood by the window again. Snow blanketed the plaza below like frosting over a forgotten cake. The boys were gone now, probably somewhere colder than where they sat. But that little blue car, the one with the single gold stripe, it kept echoing in his mind. Not just because of its shape, but because he knew it. Not that exact one, but the feeling. The way it was crafted. How it looked slightly rushed but loved. The kind of toy you don't buy, you build when you have nothing else. Robert opened the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside, beneath old contracts and unused business cards, sat a small leather-bound sketchbook. The corners were curled. The edges torn. He hadn't opened it in nearly 20 years. Page 1, a drawing of a toy car. Blue. Gold stripe. His signature at the corner, R. Mathers, age 10. That night, he walked home slower than usual. Not because of the snow, but because of the silence inside him. His building's lobby gleamed. Polished tile. Subtle jazz. Heated air that smelled like pine. He hated it. He didn't used to. But lately, everything had felt quieter. Louder on the outside, but hollow inside. Like someone had turned down the warmth but left the lights on. He passed the mirror near the elevator. Stopped. Looked. He didn't look tired. He looked missing. Meanwhile, 4 blocks away. Inside a drafty, one-room shelter tucked between 2 crumbling buildings, Leo and Micah unwrapped a thermos of lentil soup. Their grandfather, pale and sunken, rested on a cot nearby, wrapped in layers of blankets. "I saved the car," Leo whispered. "The small one?" Micah asked, pulling the daisy-printed cloth from his pocket. Leo nodded. "We don't sell that one. Not even for 10. Micah opened the tin box at the corner of the room. Inside, 11 coins, 2 folded dollars, and a tiny note in shaky handwriting. "Mama's car is still waiting for us." Their mother had made that big wooden car with them 2 winters ago. Before the accident. Before the fire. Before the world shrank to this room. It was the last thing she ever built. They found it weeks later in a pawnshop window, barely recognizable, stripped of its paint, tagged with a price they couldn't afford. The clerk had warned them. "End of the month, boys. If you don't buy it by then, it's gone." So they started selling their smaller cars, the ones they made in her memory. From scrap wood, bottle caps, and hope. Not to survive, but to remember. To hold on to something bigger than grief. Back in his penthouse, Robert sat on the floor, not the couch, not the desk, the floor. His sketchbook open in his lap. Pencil in hand. He hadn't drawn in years. But tonight, he tried. He didn't know why. He drew the toy car first. Then two boys beside it. He didn't know their names. Didn't know their story. But somehow, his hand did. And when he finished, he wrote 3 small words in the corner of the page. She made dreams. Then he closed the book. And sat quietly. As if waiting for morning. If we don't buy it back by Friday, it won't be ours anymore. Not even in memory. Micah whispered that as he watched the snow fall heavier than ever. It was Tuesday. 3 days left. 3 days to raise $8 more. 3 days before Mama's car, the last thing she ever made, would be sold to someone who would never know her name. Robert saw them again. Same place. Same shoebox. But this time, only 4 cars remained. The blue-line gold one was gone. So was the one with glitter. All that was left were chipped, faded pieces of wood shaped with tiny, careful hands. He watched from across the street as a man in a suit stopped, then smirked. Selling trash now? You should be in school, not playing homeless. Micah lowered his eyes. Leo didn't say anything. He just picked up the tiniest car and turned it over in his hands. It had a burn mark on the side, like a faint scar. It was the only car Mama hadn't finished painting before the fire. They didn't cry. They never did in public. But Robert saw it, the way Leo squeezed the cloth in his pocket. The one with the faded daisies. That afternoon, a woman passed them holding her daughter's hand. The little girl stopped. I want one, she said, pointing. But the mother tugged her away. Don't touch that. It's dirty. The girl looked back, confused. But it's pretty. Micah smiled at her. She smiled back. Robert clenched his jaw. Inside his office, Robert opened his drawer again. The sketchbook still sat there. Open to the page he'd drawn, the boys, the toy, the snow. He closed it. He had meetings. Deadlines. Clients. His assistant knocked. Robert, I noticed those boys are still out there. He nodded without looking up. I can call security, she offered gently. Get them moved along. He paused. Then, no. Not yet. Later that day, Robert finally stepped outside again. The wind had grown sharp, and the sky was bruised with cloud. He walked over, slowly. Micah noticed him first. Then Leo. They didn't smile. They just waited. Robert looked down at the cars. Why these? He asked softly. Leo answered. They remind us of her. She built them with us, Micah added. This is how we remember. Robert nodded. Then walked away. Again. That night, the boys sat at the shelter's window, watching the falling snow. Their grandfather coughed in the background. The sound was deep. Hollow. They didn't complain. Just shared the last of their soup and counted their coins again. Still ate short, Leo said. Micah reached into his pocket and took out the cloth. Wrapped in it was the smallest, roughest car. He ran his thumb across the burn mark. Then whispered. What if we don't make it in time? Leo didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out a pencil and turned over the cardboard sign. On the back, he drew something. A car. With wings. And 3 people inside. He taped it next to their tin box. For Mama. So she knows we're trying. Meanwhile, Robert couldn't sleep. Again. The silence in his apartment was louder than ever. He thought about calling someone. But who? He hadn't spoken to his brother in 10 years. His father was long gone. And his phone contacts felt more like clients than friends. So he just sat there, staring at the drawing again. The boys. The car. The snow. Sometimes the heaviest things a child carries aren't in their hands, but in their eyes. It was Wednesday morning. 2 days left. The wind was crueler than before. The air didn't just sting, it scraped. Leo placed the shoebox down slowly. Inside were the final 3 cars. One was missing a wheel. One was barely colored. The last, the smallest, was wrapped again in the daisy cloth. Micah unfolded the cardboard sign. But this time, he didn't just set it down. He taped something beside it. A drawing. Crayon on the back of a cereal box. A winged wooden car flying. Inside it, a woman, 2 boys, and a son with a smiling face. Robert saw it from across the street. And something inside him shifted. Back in his office, Robert tried to focus. He had a site visit at noon. A proposal draft by 3. But he couldn't shake the image. That drawing. Those wings. He stared at his desk, then out the window, then back again. Then, finally, he grabbed his coat. Downstairs, the plaza felt different. Not just colder, thinner, somehow. Like silence had thickened into something heavy. He walked toward the boys, slower than usual. They didn't notice him at first. They were whispering to each other, heads lowered. Grandpa didn't wake up till late, Leo said. His cough was worse, Micah added. Do you think, if we don't get the car back, and he? Leo paused. It's like we're losing everything. Piece by piece. That was the moment Robert stopped. Not just walking. Breathing. He knelt, not beside them, but nearby. Just enough to read the drawing taped to the box. It wasn't perfect. But it was beautiful. Joyful, even in pain. That little sun smiling down from the corner? It broke him more than any tear. Did you draw this? He asked softly. Leo nodded. She used to say we could fly. That we'd never stay stuck. Robert didn't reply. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded paper. He opened it slowly. His sketch. Of them. Their shoebox. That exact moment. He placed it beside their drawing, side by side. 2 visions. 2 truths. Leo stared. Micah whispered, "That's us?" Robert nodded. "I used to draw too," he said. "A long time ago." They were quiet. Then Micah asked, "Why'd you stop?" Robert didn't answer. Not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know how. Later that afternoon, he returned to his office. But nothing fit. The chair was too stiff. The table too polished. Even the art on the wall, it felt like noise now. His phone rang. It was his assistant. Just checking in. Everything okay? Robert stared at the call screen. Then tapped decline. At the shelter, the boys counted their money again. $12.50. Still not enough. Micah looked at Leo. What if tomorrow's the last day we ever see it? Leo looked down. Then slowly unwrapped the smallest car. The one with the burn. He traced it with his finger. Mama said that Mark made it special. Because it was still strong, even burned. Micah didn't speak. He just nodded like that was all the comfort he could handle. Robert couldn't sleep again. But this time, he didn't pace. He painted. With trembling hands. He opened his old watercolor kit. Laid out the sketch. And added color. Soft snow. Cracked wood. 2 boys. 1 drawing. Sometimes we don't fix what's broken, we just become the person who won't let it break again. Thursday morning came quietly. The snow had stopped. But the cold remained. The boys sat in their usual spot, the shoebox now containing only 1 car, the smallest one. The one wrapped in daisy cloth. They hadn't unwrapped it today. Not because they didn't want to sell it. Because they knew it wouldn't matter. They were still $3 short. And tomorrow was Friday. Across the street, Robert stood by the window. But he wasn't watching them. Not yet. He was staring at something in his hands. A small envelope. Inside it, a business card from the pawnshop. He'd picked it up the night before. He didn't know what pushed him to go there. Maybe it was the drawing. Maybe it was the boy's question. Why'd you stop? Whatever it was, it didn't let him sleep until he found the place. And now, the card was warm from his fingers. His thumb hovered over his phone. He called. Is the wooden toy car still there? He asked. The man on the other end answered, You mean the one with the hand-carved wheels? Kid's VE been trying to get it. Tomorrow's the deadline. I want it, Robert said. Then paused. No, I want to restore it. He spent the day differently. He canceled meetings. Skipped calls. And drove across town with a strange mix of fear and purpose swirling inside him. The car was still there. Dusty. Dented. Faded. But not forgotten. The man behind the counter shrugged. It's yours now. But Robert didn't smile. Instead, he ran his fingers along the roof, the part with the carving. An M. Barely visible. He hadn't noticed it before. Or maybe he had. Maybe that's why he couldn't stop thinking about it. He didn't take it home right away. He took it to an old workshop 2 blocks from where he grew up. It used to be a toy repair shop, the kind his brother and he had stared through as kids, noses against the glass. It had closed for years. But the man who ran it, Mr. Ellery, still lived upstairs. Robert knocked. I need to fix something, he said. The old man looked surprised. Then smiled. So, you finally came back. They worked together. Cleaned the wood. Polished the wheels. Matched the paint as best they could. Robert didn't talk much. But his hands did. Slow. careful, focused. As if every inch of that toy was a memory worth saving. When they finished, it didn't look new. It looked loved. Ellery placed it in a clean white box. "No charge," he said. "You're not just fixing this." Robert nodded. Then drove home. That night, he stood in front of the shelter. He didn't knock. Didn't go in. He just left the box along with something else. A folded drawing. His. The sketch of the boys. With new color. He had added wings to the car this time. Not crayon. Watercolor. Light blue. Soft gold. The same hues as their favorite one. The next morning, the boys stepped outside. No shoebox. No cars. Just each other. They weren't planning to sit today. There was no point. But as they opened the shelter door, they stopped. A white box. Taped shut. With a note on top. Leo picked it up. Micah read the handwriting. "She never really left you. R.M." They looked at each other. Then opened it. Inside was the wooden car. Clean. Shining. Familiar. On the bottom, the letter M. And beside it, something new. A sketch. Of them. Together. Sometimes, the thing you give away is the thing that gives you back to yourself. Friday morning was quiet. No cars in the shoebox. No sign on the sidewalk. No boys at the corner. Just soft snow melting on the pavement where they'd once sat, as if the city had noticed their absence and paused to ask, "Where did they go?" Robert stood by the window again. Same view. But everything looked different now. Because for the first time in years, he felt different. Not bigger. Not richer. Just open. In a quiet corner of the shelter, Leo and Micah placed the wooden car on the floor. Their grandfather watched from the bed, smiling faintly. "I thought I lost it," Leo whispered. "You didn't," Micah said. "Someone saw it was worth saving." The boys took turns rolling it back and forth across the wooden floor. It wasn't about the toy. It never really was. It was the feeling that something could be lost and then returned. That maybe they could be too. Robert didn't go into the office that day. Instead, he sat at his small desk at home, sketchbook open, brush in hand. He painted. Not buildings. Not brands. Just people. A boy holding a car. A scarf with daisies drifting in the breeze. Hands. Eyes. Smiles. He didn't need to sell it. He just needed to make it. Later that week, a letter arrived at the shelter. No return address. Inside, a framed version of Robert's sketch. And beneath it, a tiny label. For Mama's Dream. The boys hung it next to their window. Beside their drawing of the flying car. 2 pictures. 1 story. Still unfinished. Weeks passed. Spring edged closer. The cold didn't bite the same way. One morning, Leo placed a new sign outside their stall, not cardboard this time, but painted wood. Paw print dreams, handmade toys with wings. Micah smiled. They weren't just selling cars anymore. They were sharing her. And Robert? He walked past that same corner every week. Sometimes he stayed a moment. Sometimes he just smiled from a distance. But he always carried something in his coat pocket. The rough little car they gave him that day. The one with the crooked wheels. The one they didn't want to sell, but did. Because they still believed in dreams. Back in his apartment, that car now sat beside a fresh canvas. Next to it, the old sketchbook. Still open. Still in use. Because Robert had become someone again. Not just a man with a past. But a man with a purpose. In a world full of noise, sometimes it's the quiet acts of kindness that change everything. If this story touched something in you, stay with us. We share stories that remind us who we are when we choose to care.